My ex-wife and her new husband ambushed me at school drop-off, sneering at my struggles. What would you do if your life was flipped upside down by a smear campaign you didn't see coming? This is my story, how my ex-wife and her new husband tried to destroy everything I built, and the shocking twist that changed everything. I never thought I'd be the one fighting to clear my name, but here I am. Stick around, because this is a battle you won't believe. I gripped the steering wheel of my old pickup truck, knuckles white, as the engine hummed under me. The morning sun was just creeping up over the horizon, casting a golden light across the parking lot of Madison Elementary. I wasn't even sure how long I'd been sitting here, just staring at the school's main entrance, waiting for something to happen. The voices of my kids, Sophia and Caleb, filled the truck's cab, their laughter and chatter about their teachers, recess, and all the things they hoped to do today. Their excitement, their innocence, it made the pit in my stomach grow deeper, heavier. The first day of school should be a celebration, a fresh start. But for me, it was anything but. I glanced in the rearview mirror at Sophia, her wide eyes filled with concern. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft, worried. I forced a smile, trying to reassure her, though inside, I was anything but calm. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm fine. Today's about you and Caleb. Let's make it awesome, all right?" I tried to sound enthusiastic, but even to my own ears, it felt flat, hollow. I turned off the engine, shoved open the door, and stepped out, the cool morning air hitting my face like a slap. The usual nerves from school drop-offs were amplified today, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Caleb, as always, was eager to get going. He hopped out of the truck, his brand new sneakers slapping the pavement with a solid thud, his backpack bouncing behind him. He barely waited for me to close the door before he darted off toward the school, already distracted by the prospect of friends and playtime. Sophia, on the other hand, lagged behind, clutching her purple backpack like it was a lifeline. She was hesitant, glancing up at me with that quiet, knowing look. My heart sank. She saw it, the tension, the discomfort. She knew something was off. "It's going to be okay," I told her, my voice catching in my throat. "Let's go." We walked toward the entrance together, and that's when I saw them. Megan, standing by the flagpole, looking every bit the part of the polished, put-together woman she always was. Her blonde hair was styled to perfection, her jacket fitted just so, the epitome of effortless elegance. And beside her, Kyle, her new husband, casually leaning against the pole, arms crossed over his chest. That smug, self-assured grin on his face. They looked like a picture-perfect couple, one that belonged in a glossy magazine ad for the life I couldn't seem to catch up to. I couldn't help but compare it to my own situation: worn flannel, an old truck I was still paying off, and the constant grind of keeping a struggling small business afloat. The churning in my stomach intensified. But I didn't let them see it. Not today. "Jordan," Megan called out in that lilting voice, fake sweetness coating every syllable. "What a surprise. Didn't expect you here so early." She stepped forward with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. I could feel her eyes sizing me up, measuring me like she always had, as though everything I was, everything I'd worked for, was beneath her. I forced myself to reply, my tone as neutral as I could make it. "School drop off, Megan. Where else would I be?" Her laughter was light, too light. "Well, some parents run late. I wasn't sure if you'd manage to make it on time." Another dig. Another carefully aimed jab. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my expression in check. My kids didn't need to see their dad lose his cool. Not now. Not here. Kyle, who had been silent up until now, chimed in, his voice dripping with false charm. "It's nice to see you still trying so hard, man. Really, admirable." His words were loaded, thick with condescension. I turned to him, my face calm, my voice even. "I try, because it matters," I said simply, not giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. He chuckled, clearly thrown off by my measured response. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter that he wanted to get under my skin. What mattered was keeping my cool for the kids. I glanced at Sophia. Caleb was already running ahead to join some of his friends. But Sophia lingered, her hand clutching her backpack strapped tightly. She shot me a quick, questioning look, one that said she felt the tension too. even if she didn't fully understand it. I gave her a quick nod, a silent promise that everything would be okay. Megan crouched down, her smile too wide, too perfect. Sophia, honey, do you have everything you need, Caleb? Did Daddy remember to pack everything? Sophia hesitated, her eyes flicking between me and her mother. Yes, Mom, she said quietly, and just for a moment, I saw a flicker of something that made my chest ache. Megan's smile widened, but it was that same insincere, performative smile. Have a great day at school, she called out, brushing imaginary lint off her blazer like she was some picture-perfect, doting mother. We'll see you later, kiddos. I stood still for a moment, watching my kids disappear into the school, a lump forming in my throat. As soon as they were out of sight, I turned back to Megan and Kyle. They were still standing there, watching me, waiting for a reaction, no doubt hoping for a crack in my composure. Kyle's smirk was back, but now it was even more pronounced, almost smug. Don't take it so personally, Jordan, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. We're all just here for the kids, right? No need to make things awkward. Awkward? I repeated, my voice steady but firm. Awkward would be me commenting on your parenting, Kyle. But I won't stoop that low. I saw the briefest flicker of hesitation in his expression. The smirk faltered for just a second, but I didn't wait around to watch it crumble. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked back toward my truck, each step deliberate, steady. The weight in my chest felt like a ton of bricks. I could feel the frustration building up, but I couldn't let it get to me. Not here. Not now. Not with the kids around. I climbed into the truck, slammed the door, and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel once again. My heart was pounding. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to let out the frustration that had been building ever since. Megan had left me and moved on so quickly with Kyle. But I couldn't. Not now. I had to stay composed for Sophia and Caleb. I started the engine and drove off, my mind racing as I turned the corner, the school disappearing in my rearview mirror. They thought they had won. They thought they could make me feel small, insignificant. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I had barely gotten to my desk when the first email hit my inbox. I should have known something was off. It was from a longtime client, someone I'd worked with for years. The subject line was innocuous enough, questions about our current contract. But it wasn't the subject that caught my eye. It was the tone of the email. It was polite, professional even, but there was something lurking beneath it. A question, buried in the carefully crafted words, that I couldn't ignore. Is everything okay with your company? We've heard some concerns about your financial situation, and would like to know if there's anything we should be aware of. I stared at the screen for a long moment, letting the words sink in. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself it was just a routine question, but my gut told me otherwise. I'd been in business long enough to know when something wasn't right. I clicked open the email, reading it over again, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. Rumors. That's what this was. And I knew exactly where they were coming from. Megan and Kyle. They'd been at it for weeks now, throwing dirt on my name, and it was starting to stick. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand over my face. This was bad. Real bad. I'd worked so hard to build this business from the ground up. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every late night, every sacrifice, every tough call I'd made to keep the lights on, it was all coming to a head now. And it felt like I was losing control. The fact that they were going after my reputation didn't just piss me off, it terrified me. I couldn't afford to lose clients. I couldn't afford to let them win. But what could I do? Megan and Kyle had done their homework. They knew who to target, who to whisper to. And now, the damage was starting to show. I closed the email and sat there, staring at the screen, my mind racing. How had it come to this? I had never imagined that Megan, of all people, would go this far. Sure, we'd had our differences, hell. We'd had our share of fights during the divorce, but I thought we could at least agree on one thing, our kids. But that was before she remarried Kyle. And before Kyle decided to step into my life like he owned it. Now, it wasn't just my business they were gunning for, it was me. My life. My ability to stand on my own 2 feet, and show my kids that I could still provide. Still fight for what was mine. I stood up from my desk, my mind buzzing. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit here and wait for the world to collapse around me. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts, looking for anyone who might have heard something. The first person I dialed was Pete, a guy I'd worked with on a few projects. He wasn't a client, but he'd always been a solid guy, someone who had a good pulse on the industry. I needed to know what was being said, who was talking, and who was spreading the poison. It rang a few times before Pete picked up, his voice low and cautious. "Yeah? Hey, Pete, it's Jordan. I've got a question for you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Have you heard anything, about my company lately? Any rumors, anything people are saying?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, long enough to make my heart beat faster. "Well," Pete began slowly, "I did hear something. A couple of guys mentioned you might be having financial issues. Something about cash flow problems or losing a big account. But you know how people talk." I didn't think it was true. My stomach dropped. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just idle gossip, it was coordinated. They were going after my livelihood, my reputation. They were trying to tear everything down, piece by piece. Kyle, with his smirk and his arrogance, must have been the one feeding these rumors. I could practically hear him in my head, casually dropping hints at those networking events, telling people that Jordan's company was on the brink of collapse. It was a smart move, too. Just enough doubt to make people second-guess their decisions, but not enough for anyone to point the finger directly at him. It was insidious. "Thanks, Pete," I said, my voice tight. "I really appreciate you letting me know." I hung up the phone and sat back down, my mind working in overdrive. If Kyle thought he could destroy everything I'd built with a few well-placed rumors, he was wrong. He didn't know who he was dealing with. I wasn't going to let him tear me down like this. Not without a fight. I pulled up my company's financials on my laptop, scanning the spreadsheets quickly. Everything looked fine. My cash flow was stable. The reports showed steady growth over the past few quarters. There were no signs of trouble, not the kind of trouble Kyle was implying. But that wasn't the point. The point was that people were talking. And if I didn't do something about it soon, that talk would become a wildfire, burning through my reputation, my business, and everything I'd worked for. I needed to get ahead of this. I needed to address the rumors before they could gain any more traction. I started drafting an email to my top clients, outlining my company's financial position, and reassuring them that we were on solid ground. The last thing I wanted was for them to start pulling out. But if they heard this crap from Kyle, they might not even give me the chance to explain. I wrote the email quickly, my fingers flying over the keys. I attached the latest financial reports, showing the growth I had worked so hard for. The email was simple, clear, and professional. I wasn't going to grovel. I wasn't going to beg for their trust, but I would give them the facts. They deserved the truth. When I hit send, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment. I felt the tension in my chest, the tightness in my shoulders, start to loosen. But it wasn't enough. This wasn't just about answering questions, or offering reassurances. It was about something much bigger than that. It was about taking back control, showing Kyle and Megan that they couldn't break me. The phone buzzed on my desk. I picked it up without thinking. It was a call from one of my newer clients, someone I hadn't worked with as long as some of the others. The voice on the other end was hesitant, almost apologetic. "Jordan," the voice said, "I've got to ask, is everything okay with your company? We've been hearing some concerns, and we just want to be sure everything is stable before we move forward with the next project." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "Everything's fine," I said, my voice steady. "We're doing well. We've got a great pipeline of work ahead, and we're delivering on all fronts. If you have any questions about our stability, I'd be happy to talk through the details with you." There was a pause, then a hesitant, "I appreciate that, Jordan. We just wanted to make sure." "Of course," I said, keeping my voice calm, professional. "I understand. I'll send you the latest financial reports, and I'm happy to discuss anything else you need." The conversation ended, and I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. I felt a mix of relief and frustration. The damage had already been done. Kyle's whispers were out there, and they were starting to stick. But I couldn't let that be the end of it. Not for me, not for my company, and definitely not for my kids. I knew this fight wasn't over. It had just begun. So, here's the question. Do you think I'll be able to expose the truth and show them they've underestimated me? Or is my entire life going to crumble because of a few well-placed lies? Comment 1 if you think I'll fight back and win. Comment 2 if you think they'll get away with it. Let's see who's right. This is just getting started. I was sitting in my office the next morning, staring at my computer screen, when it hit me like a slap to the face. All this time, I had been reacting to the rumors, trying to keep the fire from spreading. But it wasn't enough. I had to take control. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear. I wasn't dealing with just a few idle whispers. Megan and Kyle had set something much more deliberate in motion. They were playing a long game, and if I didn't find a way to fight back, they'd destroy everything I'd worked for. I couldn't afford to be passive anymore. I wasn't going to just sit here and wait for the phone calls to keep coming in, each one another reminder of how much damage had been done. I wasn't going to wait for my clients to make up their minds based on lies. If I let them think for one more second that I was on the brink of collapse, I'd lose everything. My reputation, my business, my pride, it would all be gone. And for what? So Megan and Kyle could feel like they'd won? No. I had spent too many sleepless nights building this business from the ground up, making sacrifice after sacrifice, to let them tear it down with a few nasty rumors. I grabbed my phone and dialed Pete again, hoping for something solid, some kind of lead. Anything that could give me the upper hand. He picked up after the first ring. "Hey, Pete," I said, trying to sound calm, but I could feel the tension in my voice. "I need to know something. Have you heard Kyle talking to anyone about my business? Or about me, for that matter?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Pete shifting around, maybe wondering how much he should say. I was prepared for anything, but what I got was more than I expected. "Yeah," Pete said, his voice low. "I've heard Kyle's been asking around. He's been dropping your name a lot, talking about how things might not be going so well with your company. He's been telling people it's struggling, that your cash flow is iffy, even suggesting that you might be losing a big account. I didn't think much of it at first, but I figured you'd want to know." My heart sank. The lies were spreading faster than I'd realized. This wasn't just some casual gossip, it was calculated. It wasn't enough to just badmouth me at the school drop-off, or behind my back. Kyle was actively working to destroy my reputation, and it was working. Clients were asking questions. People were wondering if they should stick around. I slammed the phone down and stood up from my desk, pacing the small space in frustration. My fingers itched to do something, anything that would turn the tide. I needed more than just damage control. I needed a plan. I had to get in front of this before it took everything I'd built. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't fight this on my own. I needed to expose what Kyle and Megan were doing. I needed to show my clients that they were being fed lies. But how? What could I possibly do to prove it? I stood still for a second, my mind racing. Then it hit me, I could use the truth. There was no way they could keep spreading lies if I laid everything out. If I showed my clients exactly what was happening, showed them the solid ground my company was standing on, they'd see through the smokescreen Kyle had set up. I just had to make sure I had all my ducks in a row. Every number, every client, every contract I needed to show them. I wasn't on the edge of disaster. I was thriving. I sat back down and opened my laptop, pulling up all the financials I'd been tracking over the last few months. The numbers were clear, steady. My cash flow was strong. The company was on track for growth. And I had solid contracts lined up. It was the truth. All I had to do was present it in a way that couldn't be ignored. The clock ticked away as I worked, pulling reports, putting together everything I needed to send to my clients. I wasn't going to beg for their trust. I wasn't going to apologize for things that weren't even true. But I would make sure they knew the truth: my company was in good shape, and I was fighting back. By the time I hit send on the last email, my hands were shaking slightly. I had done everything I could to counter the rumors. Now it was up to my clients to see the truth for themselves. But there was still that nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Kyle and Megan weren't just going to sit back and let me have the last word. They were too invested in seeing me fail. I had no illusions about that. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the email chain that had already started to come in. Some of my clients had responded quickly, thanking me for the transparency, for the clarity. A couple more were still hesitant, asking more questions. but I knew that was to be expected. The damage Kyle and Megan had done wasn't going to vanish overnight. But for the first time in days, I felt like I had a fighting chance. As the day went on, the emails kept coming, each one more reassuring than the last. They believed in me, they believed in my company, and that was the first victory. But the real battle was still ahead. Megan and Kyle weren't done. Not by a long shot. But I was ready now. I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. It didn't take long for me to realize that sending out those emails and reports wasn't enough. The phone calls kept coming, and they weren't the kind of calls that reassured me. It was the same question, repeated over and over again. Are you okay? Every time I answered the phone, there was that tone concern, doubt, the kind of skepticism that made my gut twist. Clients who had been loyal for years were suddenly pulling back, not completely, but just enough to make me realize how deep the damage really was. I couldn't help but feel like a house of cards was starting to crumble around me. And I was helpless to stop it. But I wasn't helpless. I couldn't afford to be. I knew Kyle and Megan were behind this. They were too connected, too well versed in playing dirty. What I was hearing on these calls wasn't random. It was strategic. It was calculated. They were poisoning the well, one client at a time. And the worst part, they were so damn smooth about it. Just enough doubt to make people question, but not enough to make them outright reject me. It was the perfect setup. They wanted to wear me down, wear my clients down, until I had nothing left. I sat at my desk that afternoon, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to think of a way to fight back that didn't feel like I was just reacting. I needed to be proactive. I needed something bigger than just emails and phone calls. If Kyle thought he could break me with rumors and lies, he was gravely mistaken. But what could I do? I couldn't just march into every one of my clients' offices and demand their loyalty. I had to make them see the truth, the real truth, before it was too late. That's when it hit me. I had all the numbers in front of me. I had the contracts, the reports, the testimonials. I wasn't just running a small business on a wing and a prayer. I had proof. Proof that everything Kyle was telling people was pure fiction. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I knew I couldn't let that take over. I had to keep my cool. I had to be strategic. I pulled up the spreadsheet that outlined my company's financials, scanning over it quickly. Everything was in the black. I wasn't going under, not by a long shot. In fact, I had some of the best contracts I'd ever landed lined up for the next few months. Sure, there had been a couple of setbacks here and there. Every business has its ups and downs, but nothing that would justify the rumors Kyle had been spreading. I had always kept my business above board, even when things got tough. But none of that mattered if the people who mattered didn't believe it. I reached for my phone again, my fingers shaking a little as I scrolled through my contacts. I needed to reach out to the clients I trusted most, the ones who knew me, the ones who knew how hard I had worked to get to where I was. These were the people who would stand by me. These were the people who would see through the lies, who would recognize what was really happening. I picked up the phone and dialed Mike, a tech firm owner who had been one of my first big clients. He was tough, straightforward, exactly the kind of guy who wouldn't let rumors sway him. He picked up on the second ring. "Mike, it's Jordan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Listen, I need to know what's being said about my company. Have you heard anything? Anything that doesn't sit right with you?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Mike's voice came through, low but firm. "Yeah, I've heard a few things. People are talking about cash flow problems, wondering if you can handle your contracts. They're asking if you're going to be able to deliver." I didn't think it sounded like you, but I wanted to hear it straight from you. That knot in my stomach tightened even further. My suspicion was right. They were going after the people who had the most to lose. They were targeting the clients I had worked hardest to win over, the ones who trusted me the most. And they were succeeding. I could almost hear Kyle's voice in my head, casually planting those seeds of doubt, spreading them like wildfire. "Mike, listen," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I don't know who's telling you that, but I can assure you, my company is strong. We've got solid cash flow, solid contracts. I'm not going anywhere." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and then Mike spoke again. "I'm glad to hear that, Jordan. I just needed to know for sure. I'll keep that in mind." We hung up, and I sat there for a second, letting the weight of the conversation settle in. I had given him the truth, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to stop Kyle's campaign. I needed to do more. I needed to make sure every one of my clients knew the truth, that they could see it in black and white. And if Kyle thought he could continue his little smear campaign unchecked, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. I spent the rest of the afternoon compiling every bit of evidence. I had contracts, client testimonials, the most recent financial reports. I wasn't just going to tell my clients the truth, I was going to show it to them. When I hit send on that next round of emails, I wasn't hoping for reassurance. I wasn't waiting for them to tell me everything was fine. I was giving them a reason to trust me, a reason to believe in what I was building, and a reason to stand up to the lies. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. And for the first time in days, I felt like I had a chance. The next few days felt like a blur. I spent all my time on the phone, answering calls, dealing with emails, and trying to put out the fires. Kyle and Megan had started. The emails I'd sent earlier seemed to have worked, at least for the most part. A few clients had reached out, reassured by the facts I had laid out. But there were others, clients I had never imagined would question me, who remained silent. The doubt had already crept in, and now I was fighting just to hold on to what I had. I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. Every call, every meeting, every conversation was tainted by the question I couldn't escape. Are you really okay? They didn't say it outright, but I could hear it in their voices, see it in their hesitant replies. I wasn't just fighting to keep my business afloat. I was fighting to keep my integrity intact. I couldn't afford to let Kyle and Megan win. Not now, not after everything I'd worked for. The worst part? They were still out there, still spreading their lies, still working behind the scenes to ensure that every bit of progress I made was met with an equal amount of doubt. The whispers weren't just about the business anymore, they were about me, about my ability to be a father, to provide for my kids. Megan and Kyle had taken it beyond business. They were trying to strip away everything that mattered to me. But I wasn't going to let them. I couldn't. I had spent too many years building up my company, scraping and clawing my way to where I was. I had built relationships with clients based on trust, based on hard work and results. And now, I was going to remind them of that. I sat at my desk, looking at the screen. The numbers were still solid. The reports still backed up everything I had said. But it wasn't enough. It wouldn't be enough until I proved it to every single person who had heard those rumors. Until I showed them that Kyle's lies were just that, lies. I knew I had to take the fight to them. I had to confront this head on, not just with facts and reports, but with action. I dialed the number for Tom, one of my largest clients. We had worked together for years, and I had always thought of him as a friend. The phone rang a few times before he picked up. Jordan, hey, how's it going? I hesitated for a second, trying to gauge the tone of his voice. Tom, I've been getting some feedback, and I need to ask, have you heard anything strange about my company? Anything that's been said that doesn't sit right with you? There was a long pause. Too long. Then he spoke, his voice a little more guarded than usual. Yeah, I've heard some things. A couple of people have mentioned your company's stability. Nothing serious, just some concerns. People asking if you're going to be able to handle the workload we've got coming up. You know how it is, people talk. My stomach tightened. I had known it was happening, but hearing it out loud hit harder than I expected. Kyle was still at it, still planting those seeds of doubt. And the worst part? It was working. Tom, I want you to hear this from me, I said, my voice steady, even though I could feel the pressure building. Everything is fine. I'm not going anywhere. We've got solid cash flow, and we've got projects lined up. My company is stable, and I'm committed to delivering on every promise I've made. I've got the numbers to back it up. There was another pause. I know you do, Jordan. I've always trusted you, he said, his voice softening. But with everything going on, I just needed to be sure. I don't want to make any moves until I know everything's okay. I took a deep breath, relieved that at least he was listening. I get it, Tom. And I appreciate you taking the time to ask. I've got the reports, the contracts, and everything else you need. I'm happy to go over it with you anytime. Thanks, Jordan. I'll take a look at what you've sent over, and we'll talk soon. The call ended, and I sat back, trying to steady my breathing. It wasn't a home run, but it was a step in the right direction. Tom had listened. He hadn't jumped to conclusions. But the fact that I had to explain myself, that I had to assure him that I was still capable, stung. I hated it. I hated that my clients, my friends, had to second guess me because of a few well-placed lies. But that wasn't going to be the end of it. I wasn't just going to sit here and wait for more clients to call with their doubts. I had to do more. I had to get ahead of it. I needed to prove, once and for all, that Kyle's smear campaign had no legs. I picked up the phone again, this time calling every client who had responded with even a hint of hesitation. I wasn't just going to apologize. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to show them the facts, show them the truth. And maybe, just maybe, when they saw the numbers, they'd see through the lies. The truth was on my side, but I needed to make sure they saw it. The next few days were a whirlwind, and if I'm being honest, I barely kept my head above water. I spent every waking minute working on damage control fielding calls, answering emails, and making sure the few clients who hadn't already been swayed by Kyle's whispers were still in my corner. The hardest part wasn't answering the questions. It was the uncertainty that hung in the air. The fact that no matter how many reports I sent, no matter how many reassurances I gave, I could still feel the doubt creeping in. I had a few more solid conversations with clients, and each one made it clear there was more going on than just a few rumors. Kyle wasn't just talking to my clients. He was feeding them just enough information to make them question their decisions. They weren't pulling out yet, but the cracks were starting to show. A couple of clients were already asking for reassurances about upcoming contracts, wondering if we could deliver the way we had promised. The fact that I even had to have that conversation felt like a punch to the gut. I had built this company from scratch. I had worked my ass off, day and night, to make sure that every client knew they could count on me. And now I was having to convince them that I wasn't about to drop the ball. It was during one of those calls that it hit me. I had been playing defense for too long. All I had been doing was putting out fires, reacting to Kyle's smear campaign. I couldn't do it anymore. I had to take the fight to him, show him that I wasn't some easy target. I had to prove that I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. It wasn't just about holding on to what I had left, it was about taking control. I picked up the phone again, but this time I wasn't calling clients. I wasn't trying to save face or reassure anyone. I called in a few favors. People I trusted, people who knew the truth, who had seen the work I put in. I needed to know who else Kyle had been talking to. I needed to know how deep his influence went. The more I learned, the clearer it became. Kyle wasn't just targeting my business, he was trying to control the narrative. He was spreading these lies not just to create doubt, but to set up a future where I was the one on the outside looking in. The pieces were starting to fall into place. It was smart, in a twisted way. He was working the angles, spreading rumors to key players, making sure they questioned every move I made. But I had something Kyle didn't have. My clients weren't just business contacts. I had built real relationships with these people. They knew me. They knew what I was capable of. It wasn't enough to just send reports anymore. I had to be more direct. I had to show them that these rumors weren't just a threat to my business. They were a threat to their own trust in me. I went to work, making phone calls to my most trusted clients, the ones who had been with me from the start. I didn't just tell them the numbers were solid. I didn't just show them the growth projections. I reminded them who I was. I reminded them of the years we had spent working together, of the projects we built together. I reminded them that when things got tough, I was always there to put in the work, to get the job done. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. And when I finally hung up the last call, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was taking back control of my story, of my business, of my future. Kyle wasn't going to win. He might have made things harder, but I wasn't going to let him destroy everything I had built. I was going to show him that I wasn't going anywhere, but I knew it wasn't over. I wasn't naive. Kyle wasn't the kind of guy who would just give up. He would keep coming after me, keep trying to tear down what I had. But now, for the first time in days, I felt ready. Ready to face whatever he threw my way. This wasn't just a fight to save my business. It was a fight to show everyone, including myself, that I could take whatever came my way and keep moving forward. It was the middle of the week when everything finally came to a head. I was sitting at my desk, the usual pile of papers in front of me, when I saw the email pop up. It was from a client I had been working with for years, one of my longest standing accounts. I opened it, expecting the usual back and forth about ongoing projects, but instead, the subject line hit me like a punch in the gut. Urgent, concerns about our future together. I clicked it open, the words blurring for a second as I read through the email. It was polite, as expected, but the message was clear. He had heard the rumors, the whispers, the talk about my company's instability, and it had made him rethink our working relationship. He didn't say it outright, but the message was as clear as day. If things didn't change, he was going to look elsewhere. My heart was pounding. I felt like I was suffocating. Every word felt like it was dragging me deeper into the quicksand. I had worked so hard to build this company, to gain the trust of people like this client, and now it was all at risk because of a few lies. My hands trembled as I typed a response, trying to reassure him, trying to explain that what he'd heard wasn't true. I couldn't let this be the breaking point. Not now. As I hit send, I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. I knew the damage wasn't just isolated to one email or one client, it was everywhere. Kyle had done his work, spreading his poison through every corner of my network, planting seeds of doubt in the people I depended on. I had no doubt that Megan was right there with him, pulling the strings, playing her part. They'd taken everything I had, my reputation, my hard work, my future, and they were trying to rip it all apart. I could feel the weight of it, the pressure pushing down on me. I wasn't just fighting to save my company anymore. I was fighting to keep my life from falling apart. But then, just as quickly as the fear set in, something else took over: anger. A fire lit inside me. I couldn't just let this happen. I couldn't just sit back and watch them destroy everything I had worked for. I was done reacting to their moves. It was time for me to make one of my own. I stood up from my desk, grabbed my jacket, and headed out. I wasn't going to sit around anymore waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for another email to land in my inbox. It was time to confront this head on. I had always been the one to take the hits, to keep my head down and work harder. But now, I was going to show Kyle and Megan that they couldn't just walk all over me. They had no idea who they were messing with. I called my lawyer on the way to my car. I wasn't going to let them destroy my business without a fight. I wasn't going to let them paint me as a failure. I needed to put a plan in motion. Something bigger than just telling people the truth. I needed to take the fight to them. I needed to make sure they knew that I was ready to go the distance. I couldn't do this alone, though. I knew that now. I needed my allies, the people who had always believed in me, who had trusted me enough to stick by my side when things weren't easy. I was going to fight for my business, for my family, for my reputation. I had been pushed to the edge, and I wasn't about to back down. The closer I got to my lawyer's office, the more the fire inside me burned brighter. I had reached my breaking point, and now, it was their turn. They thought they could take me down with a few lies, but they were wrong. This was just the beginning. I wasn't going anywhere. I had too much to lose and too much to prove. I stepped into the office, my mind clear, my heart steady. It was time to make them pay. Time to show them that you don't mess with a man who's got nothing left to lose. The meeting with my lawyer felt like a turning point. I walked into his office with a fire in my gut, the anger from everything that had happened churning in my chest. This wasn't just about my company anymore. It wasn't just about surviving the damage Kyle and Megan had tried to do. This was about showing everyone that I wasn't going to fold under pressure, that I could take their punches and keep coming back. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to hit back harder. When I sat down across from my lawyer, I could see the concern in his eyes. He knew me well enough to see that something had changed. The usual calm, measured approach wasn't going to work here. This wasn't about negotiating anymore. I needed a strategy, a way to strike back and protect what was mine. I couldn't afford to wait around for the next lie to surface. I needed to control the narrative before Kyle and Megan completely poisoned the well. "Jordan, what's going on?" he asked, his voice steady but with a hint of curiosity. He must have been used to dealing with the usual business problems. But this was different. This was personal. I leaned forward, trying to control the fire burning inside me. "I need to take action," I said, my voice rough. "Kyle and Megan have been spreading rumors about my company. It's hurting my reputation, and I can't just sit around and let it happen anymore. I need to know what legal options I have to go after them. I can't just let them get away with this. He nodded slowly, his fingers tapping lightly on his desk as he processed what I was saying. It's going to be tough, Jordan, he said, his voice lowering. Defamation is hard to prove. You'll need evidence, solid evidence that they're intentionally trying to ruin your reputation. And even then, it can be a long, expensive process. I leaned back, rubbing my hand over my face. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But I wasn't asking for easy. I wasn't asking for mercy. I was asking for a chance to make them pay for what they were doing. I know it's not going to be simple, I said. But if I let this go on, I lose everything. My business, my clients, my family. I can't let them destroy everything I've worked for. He sat back, his eyes narrowing as he thought it through. Finally he spoke. We'll need to start gathering evidence. Records of the rumors being spread. Any emails or messages where they're talking about you. If we can prove they're intentionally trying to harm your business, we might have a case. I nodded, determination settling over me like a heavy coat. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm not going to sit back and let them win. I'm done being on the defensive. This is my life, and I'm going to fight for it. My lawyer gave me a look that was part respect, part caution. All right, he said, leaning forward. We'll get to work on this. But you need to be prepared. This could get ugly. It could get personal. You're not just fighting for your business anymore. You're fighting for your name, your reputation, and that's something that doesn't come back easily. I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. I'd always been able to brush off the small stuff. But this wasn't small. This was everything. My kids, my future, everything I'd fought for, it was all on the line. I wasn't going to lose. Not like this. I'm ready for whatever comes next, I said, my voice firm. I've already lost too much. I'm not losing anymore. As I walked out of that office, I felt a shift inside me. The fire was still there, but now, I knew exactly where to direct it. I wasn't just going to let Kyle and Megan keep tearing me down from the shadows. It was time to take the fight to them. Time to make them see that they had underestimated me. They thought they could destroy my life with a few lies. Well, they were wrong. I was going to turn the tables, expose the truth, and when the dust settled, I was going to be the one standing tall. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about me, my family, and everything I had built. And I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all them, tear it down. I was up late again, staring at the screen. The numbers, the emails, the endless paperwork, it was all starting to blur together. The weight of everything on my shoulders was more than I could bear at times. But I wasn't about to let it break me. Not now. Not after everything I had fought for. I had spent my whole life building this business from the ground up, putting in the hours, taking the risks, and sacrificing everything I had to make it work. And now, after everything I had done, Kyle and Megan thought they could tear it all down with a few well-placed lies? No way. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I closed my laptop and stood up, pacing the small room as my thoughts ran wild. I had done everything I could. I had reached out to the clients who mattered most. I had given them the truth, the facts, the solid numbers that proved my company was in good shape. And yet, the whispers hadn't stopped. They hadn't stopped because Kyle and Megan weren't backing down. They were relentless, they were smart, and they knew exactly how to play the game. But I wasn't done yet. I couldn't just sit back and let them control the narrative. I couldn't let them take everything from me, not after all the work, all the sweat, all the years I had spent building something that mattered. So I decided to hit them where it hurt. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I wasn't going to sit here and wait for their next move. I was going to make mine. The next day, I went to the office early, my mind sharp with purpose. I walked through the front door and headed straight to my desk, pulling up the most recent financial reports. I knew that if I was going to confront this, I needed something more than just words. I needed to show everyone, once and for all, that the rumors Kyle and Megan were spreading weren't just unfounded, they were completely baseless. My company was strong. I had the numbers to prove it. I spent hours compiling every bit of data I could find, sales reports, client feedback, all of it. It was a thorough breakdown of where we stood and where we were headed. I even pulled up contracts I had secured for the upcoming months, the ones that showed the growth and stability of the company. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. If I was going to expose the lies, I needed to do it with facts. And I had facts. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I prepared the presentation. It was going to be the weapon I needed to fight back, to prove that I wasn't some struggling, underdog businessman, barely holding it together. I was a man who had built something solid, something real, and no one, not Kyle, not Megan, could take that away from me. With everything in front of me, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to send out another email, not just another report. I had to take this to the next level. I picked up the phone and called a meeting with all of my key clients. They needed to hear this from me, face to face. I wasn't going to hide behind emails anymore. I wasn't going to let the rumors control me. It was time for me to take control of the situation. I scheduled video calls with my biggest clients, the ones who had shown even a flicker of doubt. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. Each call would be a chance to speak directly to them, to show them the truth, to give them a clear, undeniable picture of where my company stood. As I prepared for each meeting, my nerves were on edge. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't going to let them see weakness. I wasn't going to let them see fear. I was going to show them exactly who I was. A man who had built something from nothing, and wasn't about to let it go without a fight. The first call came through, and I answered it, sitting up straight in my chair. I made sure everything was perfect. My screen shared the right documents. My voice was steady, confident. "Hey, Tom," I said, smiling, trying to hide the nerves. "I've got the numbers here, and I wanted to walk you through everything we've been doing." I could hear the hesitation in his voice at first, but as I explained, as I showed him the reports, the contracts, everything, I could feel the shift. It was subtle, but it was there. The doubt that had crept into his mind, the doubt Kyle and Megan had planted, started to fade away. By the end of the call, Tom was calm again, reassured. "I appreciate you walking me through everything, Jordan," he said. "This clears things up. I never doubted your work, but I needed to know for sure. Thanks for being upfront with me." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. It wasn't over, but it was a victory. Tom was still with me. He believed in me, and that belief was what mattered. I wasn't just trying to win back clients. I was trying to win back their trust. And I had just taken the first step in doing that. I moved on to the next call, and the next, each one following the same rhythm. My confidence grew with each meeting. I was getting through to them, showing them what Kyle and Megan hadn't counted on, that I wasn't some victim to be trampled on. I was a man who was ready to fight for what he had worked for. By the time the day ended, I had secured my clients' loyalty. Some of them had been hesitant at first, but after the meetings, after I laid everything out for them, they were with me. They knew the truth, and the truth was powerful. But even with all of this, even with the success of these calls, I knew it wasn't over. Kyle and Megan weren't going to back down that easily. They still had a plan, still had the connections, and they were still out there, trying to undermine everything I had built. I couldn't stop now. But one thing had changed. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. I had the truth. I had the facts, and now I had the upper hand. The battle wasn't over. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was going to win this fight. I wasn't going to let Kyle or Megan destroy everything I had worked for. And if they thought they could, well, they had another thing coming. The war wasn't over. But now, I was ready. Here's where the real question lies: did I come out on top? Or did they succeed in bringing me down? You're not going to believe the shocking way this all ended. But you know what? I'm stronger now than I've ever been. If you want to hear the final twist, hit that like button, comment below, and share this with someone who's been through something similar. And don't forget to subscribe. There's more to this story than you think. The lesson here is simple: never let others define your worth, especially when they're trying to tear you down. In America, hard work, integrity, and determination still matter, no matter how much others try to undermine them. When you face challenges, when rumors spread or people try to bring you down, stand up, speak your truth, and prove them wrong. Don't let fear hold you back. Use it to fuel your fight. If you believe in yourself, and stay true to your values, you can overcome anything that comes your way. Never back down, because your success is worth fighting for.